It's the all-important final round clash between Vidit Gujarati, who has taken the top board for Oil and Natural Gas Corporation ONGC, against Pragnananda, who is representing Indian Oil. There you see Pragnananda being wished by his teammates Karthikeyan Murli and B. Adiban. Indian Oil has a very strong team, and so does ONGC. The team which wins this will be the champions. In the backdrop, you can see Koneru Hampi playing for ONGC. You also have Sethuraman, Mitrabha Guha, while the Indian Oil team consists of Prag, Karthikeyan, Raunak Sadhwani and Adiban. But the top board clash between Prag and Vidit is so exciting. 25 minutes plus 10 seconds increment and off we go. Prag has the white pieces, Vidit calming himself down before the clash. Prag taking his time before he makes his first move. Very nice scene. Both players have closed their eyes and d4 on the board. How does Vidit react to this? This is very important game because, you know, the team which will win this match will get the title, and it's very important from their employment perspective. c4 has been played. What is Vidit going to choose? Will he go for his Ragozin? Looks like it. He goes e6. Prag plays his knight out to f3. And then think about players of the young generation like Pragnananda and others is that they always have some tricky ideas up their sleeve in the opening. Meanwhile, Vidit is such a solid player and has so much experience in the Ragozin, but he has taken his time and presses the clock very softly, plays the Ragozin, bishop g5. You can see Pragnananda has built a solid 2.5 minute lead. h6 played, and now the main move is to take the knight. You can also play bishop h4. You could see in the background Surya Ganguly is the reserve player in this matchup. He is not playing, which just shows the strength of Indian Oil. He came to give water to Pragnananda, a thorough team player. Queen a4 check, knight comes out to c6 and e3 played. We have more than 1000 games that have reached this position. The idea of this check is that you provoke the knight to come to c6 so that black cannot get this important break easily with c5. Castle has been played and Prag plays his bishop out to e2. Some of the players who have played this opening as white are Vidit himself, Caruana, Le Quang Liem and many others. D takes c4 played, and now Prag castles. In this position, if black achieves a successful e5, he'll be able to open up his bishop. But for now, Vidit goes bishop to d7, and Prag simply takes the bishop pawn on c4 because there's no real discovered attack coming up. If you play knight e5, I have d takes e5 attacking your queen. So there's no real discovered attack there on the queen. Vidit now takes on c3 and pawn takes c3 has been played. I was wondering if Vidit could put his bishop back to d6. That is also possible, but the main move is to take on c3. Prag has taken back, and now rook f d8. Vidit Nepomniachtchi had gone this way, and there Vidit had played bishop e2, but Prag now innovates with bishop b5, bishop e8 played, and Pragnananda's clock shows that he is in his preparation. 26 minutes and 10 seconds, he goes queen c2. There is some game here played before, maybe a correspondence game. Queen to e7, and one can already sense that white has a small edge now because black has not been able to unravel himself so easily, and queen e4 is such a cool move. You want to put your bishop back to d3 and then weaken the black king. He plays his pawn to a6, sort of provoking Prag to go back, and Prag just a little bit worried whether bishop d3 is the correct move or not, and then plays it. Now the threat is queen h7 check and mate, so Vidit quickly plays his pawn up to g6. And what does Prag do now? Well, he's thinking, he plays his pawn to h4. What a nice move. He wants to open it up with h5, and Vidit goes king g7. Now Vidit is an experienced defender. He sees that if h5, there is f5, queen f4 and g5. So firstly, rook a d1 is important. This also protects the bishop on d3 from any attacks from the rook on d8 later on. Queen d6 played and the bishop goes back to b1. White is now having a very clear edge. Knight moves to e7 and Vidit is saying to Pragg, take this pawn if you want, my bishop will come out and there will be trouble. So Pragg says, sorry, I don't need it, I'm going to play my knight to e5. f6 played. Interesting move because g6 pawn is weakened but currently it is well protected by the knight and bishop. Pragg jumps back with his knight to d3, now looking at the c5 square. Very positional chess going on with it down to 7 minutes. Pragg has 17 minutes. All the boards still continuing in the match, so the match can go either way. b6 played by Vidit here, saving the pawn, and now c4 is such a strong move. A very good idea for white now is to push c5 if possible. The bishop moves to c6, attacks the queen, and you need to move the queen. Where do you move it? The queen goes to g4. Very logical chess. Vidit is actually not having too many moves here to play. He's played his pawn to h5, and Pragg can simply move his queen back to h3, keeping an eye on the e6 pawn. He thinks for a minute or so and brings his queen back to h3. What does Vidit do next here? He brings his king to f7. Now, a cool idea here is to play bishop c2, bishop b3 and then c5 attacking here. But Pragg goes knight f4. And he's also still looking at e6, but this gives Vidit the chance to push forward with e5. And this is an interesting move. Maybe a good idea now is to just completely complicate the position with c5, but instead he goes d takes e5. Okay? And the point is you can't really take queen takes d1 because there is an intermezzo check here. So he takes with the queen on e5, and Vidit is saying that look, I have managed to actually improve my position a bit. Bishop c2 played by Pragg, and again the idea is bishop b3, c5. So Vidit goes bishop e4. Nice move, because now if you play bishop b3, I have c5 blocking your bishop completely. So Praggnanandhaa must take the bishop. He takes it, and Vidit takes it with the queen. The only advantage that white has at this point is the weakened black king, and Pragg goes in with the rook. That is the best move here. Rook to d7 played, and this keeps the pressure still going. Now there are threats like take, queen takes, and if the queen moves away, knight g6, king g6, and you can pick up the knight here. So Vidit has to remain careful. C7 pawn is also attacked. He takes the pawn on c4, and now if you take knight g6, this is the point. If you take here king g6, queen e7, the king is weak, but it should be holdable. So Pragg says, I will keep that threat in hand and I will develop another piece. This is just phenomenal thinking by the youngster. Rook g8 played by Vidit. He should have played queen c6 here, trying to trade off the queens, but he goes rook g8. And now Pragg gets in his knight to d5. Strong move. Queen e4, defending the e7 knight. How does Praggnanandhaa increase the pressure on e7? The knight is pinned. The king is slightly weakened. But Vidit has the plan of g5, creating counterplay. He takes on c7 and Vidit goes g5. What a move. The threat is g takes h4 and pressure down to the g2 pawn. How does white continue? Rook to d4 played here. Good move by Praggnanandhaa. Because now the queen has to move away. Where should the queen go? The queen moves back to e5, and now Pragg can go back knight d5, keeping the pin going. But he takes on g5, and now Vidit takes back with the pawn. The position has opened up, the material is even, and all the games have, by the way, ended in draws, which means that the entire match is now dependent on this game, and Vidit down to his last 7 seconds. Oh my god, everything hinges on this game. He goes rook e8, and Pragg has 1 minute 25 seconds to figure out what to do. He can actually take on d6 this pawn, but it just doesn't feel, oh, he takes it. It doesn't feel right to me, but actually to Praggnanandhaa it just feels completely right. That was an important pawn, because also now you can get your knight from c4 to d6. Rook b8 played, knight comes back to c4. If you give a check here, then rook comes back, and notice this point. Rook takes, queen takes, queen is attacked and the h5 pawn is attacked. So check, Prag comes back. Brilliant calculation by Pragnananda. Vidit under a lot of pressure. He has 7 seconds. There's a 10-second increment, but it's not going to be enough here to save the position. He takes on d1 with just 1 second left. Queen takes d1. Queen moves to d5, but now the h5 pawn is opri, and that can be taken. That's what Pragnananda is going to do. He's just taking his time. He's a bit nervous because this is his first ever appearance in Inter PSPB tournament. He's playing for the first time for his team Indian Oil, but he is delivering here. Queen g4 played, and now Vidit goes with his knight to g6. 2 pawns down, clearly winning position. King h2 just moves his king away from any potential checks on the last rank. Vidit also moves his king away to h6, and now it's interesting to see how is Prag going to convert this. He goes queen d4, offering a trade of queens. Vidit cannot exchange queens because that would just land him in a lost endgame. He's thinking where to move the queen. He plays his queen to f5, and now Prag puts his pawn on f3, and just a little move, just improving his position. Queen comes to c2. Now Vidit is hoping for some miracle. He's attacked the a2 pawn, and Prag can save it. He can just go a3, but Prag goes knight d6. He's going all in. Well, if Vidit takes the pawn on a2 now, then it is game over because knight f5 is a mate. After that, it's checkmate. You can work it out. So he goes knight to h4, threatening a mate himself. Prag moves his queen to g4, defending against the mate. And Vidit chops off the pawn. He asks Prag, what is your plan? Why did you give me a free pawn? Well, for Pragnananda, the idea was f4, but he's down to 22 seconds. And now in team tournaments, it's always a lot of pressure because you can see all the teammates waiting on the sidelines. Queen d5 played, and now Prag has to decide, can he exchange the queens? Because if he takes here, takes here, takes here, takes, this might end in a draw. He cannot rush. So he plays knight f7 check. What a cool move. The knight can be taken, and it has to be taken because if the king moves, then the knight will simply take the pawn. So the queen has to take the knight. Queen takes g5, king h7, queen takes h4. He's 2 pawns up again, but in queen endgames, it's all about passed pawns. And black has his own passed pawn now. And I really love Prag's move, king g1, because notice he's coming closer to this pawn in the eventuality that ever you reach a pawn endgame, the king will be within the square. Queen to g5 check. Now the king has to move, and now maybe just move your king up, king f2, but you have to be a little bit careful about the a pawn running down the board. You can see with it, just hoping that there is some glimmer of hope here. Queen b6, he brings his queen up. His idea is to stop any checks. He wants to push his pawn next. How does Prag continue? Prag has 6 seconds, 5, 4, and he takes a very risky decision of trading the queens and gives a stare to Vidit. Is this the right decision? Because after take, it's a check. Very important to see that it's a check. Vidit now picks up the pawn, and the very important move, king f2. See how the king has entered the square of the pawn, which means that the pawn cannot queen. Meanwhile, why these 2 pawns are going to support each other? For example, when the black king comes here, you play g4. The king cannot attack these pawns. They both are brothers who are going to support each other. So king e4, and now Prag can simply play g4 here and keep those pawns protected. Yes, he does. Puts his pawn on g4, and now what his king can do essentially is that after a5 king d2, he can go and stop this pawn, kill it, and these 2 pawns will take care of themselves. Notice how the crowd is gathering there. So many people have gathered for this game. Vidit is about to lose this. He resigns the game. Pragnananda not only wins this game, but also brings this win for his team. Indian Oil become the PSPB 2023 champion, and Prag's tournament had not gone so well. He had lost to Rahul VS, he had lost to Abhijit Gupta, but just when it mattered the most, he won his game. You can see the entire team coming there and analyzing. That's the beauty of this team tournaments. Abhijit Gunte comes in, who has represented Indian Oil for years now and now has a very senior post there. You can also see DV Prasad in the background there. He is retired from Indian Oil, but this victory would be so pleasant for him because he has represented Indian Oil for years. Meanwhile, Vidit walks away a bit lonely there. ONGC team is not too happy. They were close to winning this. They were close to the title, but in the end, it's Indian Oil who takes it home. What a match that was between two of the finest players of Indian chess. I hope you enjoyed this, and a big shout out to all the oil companies and PSPB for supporting Indian chess in such a big way. These all players are get regular financial support from these companies for playing chess, which is just phenomenal.